at all, knowing what they put out there as subs anyway. So
Yeah, it would make more sense
I'm not.
for someone.
Yeah.
Steve, you got a job right away.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I don't know if the job. I can't. It's hard to determine whether the job market was better or worse. I mean, I'd almost have to say it's better now, than it was then. But you got to keep in mind too. For me, I was not only willing to interview anywhere, because first of all, I wasn't actually from Pennsylvania. I was from Ohio. I got certified in Pennsylvania, and I wasn't such a homebody that I wanted to go back to Ohio, and it wasn't like I went to a university that was in my backyard either. I mean, it was only an hour and a half away, so I didn't have any care or concern to go to back home and teach within a 50-mile radius, so I wasn't limited, basically, that's what I'm trying to say. And so I, right away, well, I mean, that's the first thing that allowed me the freedom to, go anywhere. And also with the math and physics, I mean, I got a lot of interviews, and the truth of the matter is that people would look at somebody with, a dual certification as more valuable, or more marketable, not valuable. And I mean, and I had, really good grades and recommendations too, so I'm sure that helped. But I interviewed probably right away from May to probably July 4th or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I think I probably went 7 or 8 interviews. And a couple of the jobs I really wanted. A couple of the jobs I was offered and was picky because I knew I could go anywhere, so I didn't take them. Maybe that was bad, I don't know. And a couple, I didn't callbacks, or anything. So it's funny how that works. Everybody's looking for. I always tell people there's a job out there for everybody, because it's not like this district here. This district here might look at you two and say, "I want you." And another district might look at you two and say, I want you, and I don't even want to look at you for a second time. And the other district could say the exact opposite, I want you. And say, it really all depends on their needs, how you connect with the interviewers, and so there's a job out there. And the final came in the middle of July, and I was down at it was actually Williams High School, somewhere down near Harrisburg area, and I interviewed for the job, but right in the middle of July, and right before that, right before I went on that, I got a phone call from North Carolina school that I'd never even applied to. What happened was you go on these job fairs and you give your interview, or you give your resumes to people, and at that time, I mean, things are different now because it's online, but at that time, they had a big binder like this of resumes, okay? And I talked to the person briefly there. I didn't even remember, but I talked to the person briefly. And I get a phone call from this principal, and he says, I was looking through this big packet of resumes that I have from a job fair, and he said, and I happen to see that you are both a math and physics major. And so here was his logic. Okay, this is how much principals know sometimes about what teachers do. I saw that you both have certification in both math and physics. I thought you might know something about computers. That makes perfect sense to me. And he wanted to start. It was a large school, city school, and he wanted to start a AP computer science program. And he actually said that the person who came to the job fair, was at Clarion, came to the job fair, remembered me from all the people, whatever. I couldn't have feeding you much bull, but no, when I got down there, she actually said she did. Just a human resource person. And I said, okay, well, I said, I have this other interview. I said, I'm going on tomorrow or whatever. So I went on the interview at the Williams High high school, and all this is on tape, so my life story. and then so I got done with the interview, and Pennsylvania works things a little bit differently than other states, but the guy at the end of the interview said that, he said, you're our top candidate. He said, I have one more person I have to interview, and just because of protocol, and they're not in dire need of people. He said, protocol, I have to interview this person, but you're our, top candidate right now. And I said, I'm leaving. I actually was leaving from that interview to North Carolina, to go down there for the visit. And I said, I'll be honest with you. I said, I'm leaving from here to go down to North Carolina. He said, well, do me a favor. He said, before you accept a position there, he said, call me, tomorrow. And so I did my interview in North Carolina, and they were taking me out to dinner or lunch, whatever it was. And I was riding with the principal, and the principal said, and they're in much more dire need of people, down there, just because they're a growing population, and they don't graduate enough teachers down there to fill all of their open positions, each year. Well, driving, and he says, I'm not even going to ask the other interviewers yet. He says, I'm just going to offer you the job right now. And something inside, I was just like, when they interviewed, or the reason I went down there when they first called, I said, that's a long way to go down. I said, I'm also interested in coaching, so that was one of the things I was, being picky about too. I wanted to coach. And I said, I'm also interested in coaching, in cross country track. And he said, well, let me get back to you. And a couple of minutes later, he called and said, that we have a need for somebody to start a girls cross country program, and then take over their track program. I was like, wow, that's perfect. So we'll go down there. And none of the other schools had that particular position for me. And to tell you the truth, I was probably more interested at that point in my life to coach than to teach. Anyway, so I go down there. The guy offered the job, and it just clicked with me. And I said, I'll take it. I'll accept the position. Well, we went out to dinner, and I excused myself from dinner. We didn't have cell phones back then. I went to the payphone. Went to the payphone, and I called the guy up here near Harrisburg. And he said, I want you to know that you're our top candidate. I'm ready to take your name to the board. And in Pennsylvania, you have to take it to the board. You have to get approved, and all that stuff. And I said, I got to tell you, I already accepted a job down here. And I look back. I look back on life, and I'm like, I'm really glad I made that decision, because I just packed up my crap. I put it in a Grand Am that I was driving at the time, my whole life, and took off. And because I went down there where I knew nobody and had to fend for myself and make my own friends and be my own person, and I didn't have any ties to the area or anything like that, it was great for me, because I had a chance to try new things, and a lot of things down there. North Carolina and the nation just kind of needs help, and so it was nice to be able to have leadership opportunities. Whereas I look back and I'm like, I feel like if I would have gone to the place near Harrisburg, that because Pennsylvania wasn't in dire need, in a way they have their crap together a lot more than other states, even though sometimes it doesn't seem like it. But when you study other states, they do. I probably would have just gone into the status quo, been a follower of whatever, and I don't think that I would have been. I don't think I'd been here. I don't think my career path would have ended me up here. So it was a good thing, that I went down there. I matured a lot, so I'm all for just getting out of Dodge, and heading away. I didn't have any, like I said, I didn't have any ties up here either. There, I was dating a girl from York, but
What school was it?
I didn't necessarily care. Well, it was Williams County. Or not Williams County. It was where is that? I've looked it up a few times. Where? Williams? I think it was Williams High School. I think that Williams. Yeah, Williams Valley. Yeah, it must have been Williams. No, it definitely wasn't William Penn. That's Harrisburg. Oh yeah, it was Tower City right there. It's that one. It's Tower City. So
1 star.
where is that? Well, there's only one. There's only one up.
Oh yeah, one.
Wait, where is that? Sayre, William Penn.
No, I'm saying.
Yeah, right here, outside of Harrisburg here. So it must be like, that looks like, I don't know if I've ever been there before. Anyway.
I know.
I think we need 1 star.
Yeah, going up here. So actually, that's what? Over
That's
Lewistown area, over Lewisburg. Yeah. yeah, so whatever.
Right now.
So yeah, that was my progression. But like I said, I was very thankful for the time I was down there, and I think even though there's some screwed up things that I had opportunities to do, lots of things I just don't think I would have had opportunities to do here. But that's my life story in a nutshell.
Inspiring.
What?
I said inspiring.
Does it inspire you to
How long were you
spread your
there?
wings? I was there 7.5 years, and then during that time, after my first year of teaching, I started working on a master's degree. That took like 2.5 years, and then I took a year off and started working on my PhD, and then I had an opportunity to teach at a community college down there. So I kind of did that well, I think I was down there a total of 8 years, but 7.5 years in the classroom, half year there at a community college. And I taught other colleges just part-time, like at night and stuff, and then I had an opportunity to come back up here. I wasn't done with my PhD yet at NC State, but I had an opportunity to come up here and kind of had a desire at that time to move back up in the area and have a temporary position at Clarion University, which allowed me to make more money and work on my PhD at Kent State in Ohio. So I just kind of did that for 3 years. And then I was at Slippery Rock for 2 years in a tenure track position. But you do well, and I'm not necessarily super smart. I'm a hard worker. I think people would probably, when people in my undergrad and that, would have said that yes, I was really smart, okay? But I was a hard worker, and if you work hard, there are lots of opportunities out there. I didn't even apply for this position either. I keep getting these stupid jobs I don't even apply for. I didn't even apply for this position. It was actually Dr. Simon who contacted me while I was at Slippery Rock and said that I had worked with Dr. Penman. Some of you know Dr. Penman. I'd worked with Dr. Penman on some Pennsylvania Department of Education reviews around the state on some teams, and Lockheed. I wasn't looking for another job. I was fine at Slippery Rock because the girl I ended up marrying was only like 45 minutes away.
I was going to ask how your life tied into all this.
Well, but then, so Dr. Simon, they were looking for a math educator here, and I get this random email. I should have saved it, but I don't know if I did or not. I get this random email. Actually, I think I do have it on something. But I get this random email from Dr. Simon, and her name was Perkett at the time. But and she says, Dr. Penman, said that you might be a person that's willing to apply for our position. I was like, I don't even know anything about you. So and the funny thing is the following week I was actually scheduled to come up here to do a Pennsylvania Department of Education review of their programs. So I sneakily came up here and interviewed them before I applied, for that. So I asked questions around, here, and then I said, okay, I'll apply for the job. And then 14 years later, but my wife and I were getting ready to get married. We were engaged and we were getting married. So that was 2014 or 2004. So I was at Slippery Rock 2002 and 2003. We were engaged and we were getting married on July 17th, 2004. And so, and she was the same. She was like, yeah, I'll move. I'll come out here. So I thought that was cool because she kind of wanted to get away from her small hometown. And she went to high school and college and all that. And we struggled because, and this is no lie. This sounds like a lie, but this is a true story. But when I was offered the job here, Clarion University, where I went to my undergrad and where I temporary taught for 3 years, they got word that I had gotten offered a job here. They contacted me, but this is how indeed like math educators are too. They contacted me and said, no lie, they said that we would match whatever Lockhaven is, going to give you. Well, that was kind of and that was tough for us because that was my wife's hometown, It was where I was, went to college and I loved it there and ran there and whatever. And her parents owned a bunch of land, and they were willing to give us land and we could build on, and stuff like that. And it was very, tempting, but, and for, like I said, the same amount of money, right?
I would have said, nope, I want more.
And well, and so I came here. So I came here and told the dean, the situation, and he ended up starting me at a much higher salary. And people were kind of pissed off for a while because they started me out at a much higher salary than other people because of that.
That's awesome.
And that's why people around here hate me. Can we get work?
You're the one.
That is important.
I'm sorry, I
know.
That's on topic.
But it is on topic, and I think it's important that you guys hear that. But the reason that I started my conversation about other things in education, because y'all probably heard the guns they're shooting in Florida, is that there are other things that you have to deal with. And I'm not saying that right now in your life that you have this, and we don't even know the reports yet. At least I didn't hear anything today about like how many students, and I know it's 17, but how many students, how many teachers, and I know that you're not right now saying, oh yeah, I'm going to take a bullet for a student one day, or I'm willing to, or something like that, because that would be probably impossible for you to say there. But I think that once you get into your teaching profession, I don't know very many teachers out there, no matter how hated you think they might be, that would protect, their students. Because in the end, no matter how tough these students seem in school, they're 17 years old, you see them on TV crying and hugging their mom and dad, after because of, the situation. But those are things that, later on in block 2, when you get ready to go out, I talk about professionalism and things like that. And, I often think about what would happen if, on campus here, something would be happening in the hallway, and what I would do, me, I'm out the window. You guys are here for yourself. You're adults. You're adults. What's that? Yeah, that's true. I'll take a broken leg.
Fourth floor.
But seriously, it's sometimes you have to think about those things. Anyway, unfortunately, we deal with those things. But you always hear about it because it's school and it's children. It's not like it also doesn't happen at workplaces and out on city streets. So we're in the middle here, trying to answer questions like what's all involved in creating a lesson plan, and we're not. I try to have a good stopping point before you go out into the field rather than some random place. So I want to focus on lesson planning for a few days. We won't even create a lesson plan until we come back for field, because the thing that goes along with lesson plan is I don't want you to create a lesson plan until we also talk about learning theories as well. And I know you're talking about that in your ed psych class as well, and we'll try to take some of those learning theories and drop them into this class here. I don't know if we'll touch on learning theories at all next week or not, but we'll continue to see what happens there. All right, clearances. Anybody? Anything new?
Still waiting on FBI.
Okay.
I'm going to print out during the break. I'll print out all my practice stuff in case you want.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, that's fine. Well, you don't even have to print it out. It would be nice to just look at it and see.
Oh.
All right. Let's make sure, because I kind of did this in a hurry, because I want your minds thinking about semester-long research project. So in your packet, though, let's make sure we are all on the same page. Page 17. That's not actually what I mean. So now we can go over this fairly slowly. We had time the other day. So I want you to spend the rest of the semester. This is not due until the end, but there are checkpoints. Okay, there are checkpoints along the way because I want to make sure that you are doing things along the way. So spend some time doing your own personal research on a topic in mathematics education that you will eventually share with the rest of your classmates in both written and verbal form. So pick a topic. It doesn't have to be, you might be thinking about something you'd like to learn more about, and just rather than do what I do, which is read a little bit about everything for your paper here. I mean, you need to read a lot about one thing. Okay. So you know, it's going to be some sort of an informative or a persuasive paper. It doesn't really matter which one it is. It can be informative, you can just inform us on stuff, or it can be persuasive in the sense that you're trying to persuade us to agree with your view on a certain topic. So, well, I expect you to choose a position to take on any controversial topic. So if it is a controversial topic, you know, I'd like you to take a stand somewhere in the paper. You know, it can be information, but I'd like to see where you stand on it, because you know we need to have opinions, and I know it's difficult because everybody's opinion is critiqued and criticized, you know, for whatever they say, you know, about it. But we ought to be able to have our opinions. You know, I mean, I hear people say that, you know, oh, the shooting yesterday, you know, it's about something going on my Facebook pages was, you know, I mean, it's about mental illness. This kid, you know, had some mental issues. Okay, well, then, you know, this other person, a pastor, says that, you know, oh, the mental issues in today's society are derived from spiritual starvation, I think he said. Okay, you know, people need to get closer to God and read the Bible, and I agree with that. I don't disagree that there are also, you know, mental issues, you know, chemical imbalances that
Aren't related.
like I believe God, personally, I believe God can fix anything, but he also allows that to happen no matter whether you are close to Him, you know, or what, from a Christian standpoint. But whatever you believe on that, you know. So I believe what the guy said, but there's more to it as well. But people were chastising this guy just because, like, he has his opinion. It's okay to have your opinion. So in that case, there, have your opinion on something, be able to back it up, and you know, and I guess deal with any criticism. At the same time, I do expect any paper on a controversial topic will examine and comment on all or most valid viewpoints. So show both sides of it. You know, this is one side, this is the other side, this is where I fall. Don't make something controversial all about your belief in it, okay? Because the truth of the matter is, but there is another side to it, okay? Even though when you guys wrote your paper or test in 125, you know, when I write comments on papers, it doesn't mean I agree with the other side. And I think that's where people, you know, get offended in society today, right? Is just because I bring up another side of something doesn't mean I agree with the other side. I'm saying that there is another side, and that you need to strengthen your opinion and strengthen your position on whatever side you come down on. Or if you want to be persuaded by something I say, that's fine too. I'm not gonna, you know, hate you because you don't, or like you more than you do. Anyway, but it can be just informative if you want. Concerning references, I know most of you will do your research on the internet. Just keep a record of the websites from which you're obtaining your information. Don't forget about the library, that big thing with Windows in it. QA section is a good one to go to, and you know, I do, and I know you look sometimes at books that are 200 pages long and say, I can't read 200 pages. But it will take you less time to read a 200-page book and then use that as almost like a book report than it will be on the topic, than it will to do the searching that you're online and reading through all the stuff, all the 1,685,382 hits, right, that are in 0.1 seconds, up on Google, because I know you spend an enormous amount of time reading a lot of different things. Choose 5 if you're doing that from the internet, okay? Choose 5 good resources. Blogs are resources, but blogs are good resources, but they're also not like research-based research. I mean, a lot of them might have citations in them, but I would be careful of quoting or saying, you know, too much about something just from a blog. But if you do, just go get a book on something and read a couple chapters, you know, in that pertain to your, you'll probably be more informed and take less time. Because I'm the same way. You know, I get a topic, and all of a sudden, 2 hours later, I've read a lot about the topic, but probably more than I really need to, and now I'm having a hard time, you know, finding my way to write anything on it. I've given you some topics. Those are not exhaustive. You can choose anything you want. Just get it approved by me. first.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So mathematics used in the workplace, is that just kind of like how you can relate math to?
Yeah, and it could be in general in the workplace, or I've had people choose a specific field too. Okay, a specific field that you want to learn about how math is involved in, architecture, or whatever. So, yeah, anything. It doesn't have to be general. It could be very, very specific to a field. Or you could do it where you could take a subject like algebra or geometry, or even just one smaller subject like ratios and proportions, and speak to how that specific topic is used in various fields. So you can do that. So there's a lot of different angles you can have, but just like any other paper, and actually you're getting your first writing assignment in history of math too, and there I'll give you a little bit more detail on, because it's a writing competency course, I'll give you a little bit more detail on thesis statements and stuff like that. But you all had your writing courses and that, but the most important thing to do is sit down with your topic. These aren't thesis statements, these are just general topics. And come up with a thesis statement, okay? Mathematics is useful for the workplace because there's my thesis. Okay? I believe everybody should take algebra because of and then you're going to back that statement up, right? United States doesn't do as poorly as international test results make it look like. Okay, and you're going to back that up. Come up with a good thesis statement. You've had classes that have hopefully forced you to do that. It's not meant to consume an enormous amount of time, okay? But it will if you wait until the last minute. So periodically read things. Say, today I'm going to spend 30 minutes gathering some resources. I'll read for 2 hours this weekend on the subject. And I promise you it won't take that long. What's that, 2 hours?
2 hours.
Come on, people.
2 hours.
I can drive and read.
Yeah, well, you can. I've done it.
You can listen to
Yeah, I
it.
can get it on tape.
You can get an audiobook.
Well, well, if you can, but if you can, yeah. Well, you know what? I mean, you can also, like, there are times I'll get podcasts on educational issues and listen to them, if I know I'm going to have a long ride to Philadelphia, or, driving down to North Carolina or over to see my parents in Ohio or something like that. I'm like, rather than just randomly listening to stupid music, let me be productive and stick headphones in and do something. No length limit imposed on the paper. You're not going to be able to do it in fewer than five pages and make it, or treat it justly, I guess. And I really don't want to read more than 10. Someplace between there. It's not a 2-page. It's not a brief paper. It's a semester-long research paper. There are assessment checkpoints, and I am like a week behind here. So I said week of February 5th, which was last week, but really just between this week and early next week, because I think you should use quite a bit of your field experience time. When you don't have other stuff. I know you'll be in field a long time, and you won't have to do other stuff for the class here. But sometime. Today, tomorrow, early next week, hopefully by Tuesday of next week, I'll remind you, there's a discussion in live text for it. So if you're in our course, you're in our course here, discussions.
Oh.
I think I've started it correctly. Jonathan already did.
I cannot find it.
I'm about to do mine, right?
Yeah. So, and then the week of February 19th, so there's your first checkpoint, so you don't even care about all the rest of them. I'll remind you of them. But February 19th, so that's next week, have your topic approved by Steve and then begin your initial research. So you really, not too worried about this date here. By next week, we'll approve the topics. Okay. And then week of March 5th, right before, so you have to do this while you're out in the field. You have to just come and see me, whatever. But week of March 5th, so that's the week before spring break. I want you to meet with me for just a check of initial notes. You don't have to necessarily have anything written down, other than know you could have websites highlighted, printed some stuff off, highlighted some copies and pastes, some just notes discussing what you found about the topic. It's not an outline due. It's not a first draft due. The first draft's not due until April 2nd. So you have a lot of time for that, but you do need to meet with me March 5th. And then, spring break, great time to just sit around and do some reading. Great. All right, anyway, the rubric is attached. Any questions on that? So, as far as your reading went, I asked you to spend some time reading. What?
Did you write that?
Why, did you find errors?
No, it's just like I read that as like you took.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, I was gonna say,
It
maybe
just
you
sounds
found
like,
error.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, most anything you write over the years, like I've just added to it, but at the same time, I'm sure I've stolen things from other people too, so it's not like original. I don't claim it to be original. Because I don't like to make you guys buy a textbook here because there's just a lot of fluff and crap that I don't think needs to be in there. So I've just kind of picked and.
It says, hold on, you're not done yet.
Oh yeah.
I just need a second.
All right. On 61 though, standards, goals, and objectives. I've tried to, and this is not an exact science. Okay, what I mean is, you could read another book, you can get notes from another teacher, you can download something on the internet, and they're going to explain the difference between standards, goals, and objectives in different ways. I did this because several years ago, people were just really confused about standards, goals, and objectives. I have them clear in my head. Doesn't mean that I can clearly articulate them. It doesn't mean that you have to have the same thought about them as me. But I think the best thing to understand about standards, goals, and objectives is sometimes, and this is just the nature of writing stuff so people can understand it, sometimes standards are written as objectives. Okay? Sometimes goals read like they're standards. Okay? Sometimes objectives and goals for a lesson, they're the exact same thing. It's just the nature of the verbs that we use to state objectives and goals and standards. But one thing is for sure, objectives are very, very specific. Goals can be broad, okay? They don't have to be. I mean, it could be still very specific. But you can think of goals in a broader perspective. And standards sometimes are written really, really vague. But sometimes they're written very, very specific. And that standard does just become an objective. So you got to kind of be careful, with that. So like I said in the first, just sticking with standards. Any questions, comments? Did it help you understand things a bit, better? Standards are goals for what students should learn. So that's still like an objective. And thus establish what teachers should teach. So there are content standards and there are performance standards. So when where did I do that? Connect the standards. So when I look at something like this document, and I look over here, these are the content standards. Now these are categories, number of operations, counting, and cardinality, okay? But then these are standards for mathematical practice, all right? So this has nothing to do with a specific content. This is saying that students should be able to, we should be teaching students to make sense of problems and persevere in solving them. So what does that tell me as a teacher? Well, don't always bail out my students, right? You know, just because you can't get it, don't be so quick. And I know this is hard because, you know, we love to solve the problems that we know how to do. So when you're struggling with a problem, I need to resist the temptation to say, well, watch this. This is how you do it. Okay? I need to find ways to ask them questions to get them to see how you do it, rather than just offer that. Things like that. They need to learn to model with mathematics. You know, that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with a particular content. It's very, very broad. Now, you know, when you come into here and you say that, let's pull something out here, that grade 2, you know, and this is still what we would call a standard, all right? But you're getting more into the, you know, objective. It says, use place value concepts to represent amounts of tens and ones and to compare 3-digit numbers. But there's a lot going on there. I could break that apart into probably 3 or 4 different smaller objectives. Use place value concepts to represent amounts of tens and ones. So place value. There's 23 objects in here. Well, how many are there? There's 23. I can count to 23. Okay. Use place value to represent amounts of tens and ones. How do I represent 23? Well, no, that's not representing 23. That's representing a 2 and a 3. That's only 5. Why is that 2 to the left of that? Okay, that's a good question for, and what are we in, 2nd grade? Okay, but we're trying to get them to see that a 2 put there is means 20. Now, is there one that I could say is more broad? And these Pennsylvania ones aren't too broad, simply because people have argued and complained in the past about them being too broad, so they made it more specific. Now, when you read Common Core, then sometimes their standards are a little bit more broad, but then they break them down as well. Well, I guess now I'm going to go to junior high here. So, even that, define, evaluate, and compare. Those are pretty specific things. A little bit more broad. Use concepts of functions to model relationships between two quantities. But you're graphing, you're writing, you're interpreting, you're constructing. You know, most of those things are fairly broad. Well, anyway. Standards are written in many levels of detail. So. Goals and objectives, I talked about the 2 types, learner objectives and instructional objectives down there where it says educational objectives. Yeah, I mean, we'll see examples like this later. I mean, honestly, you're more concerned with objectives. We write objectives. Other people tend to write the goals for us, the goals and standards for us. So, you know, it's not necessarily a hierarchy of abstractness. It's not, or broadness, I guess. It's not really broad, kind of broad, very specific. You know, it's really more about how they're used than anything else. Other people tend to write the standards for us. You know, when I think of a goal, I think of, you know, I really want you to walk out of here understanding how to use the quadratic formula. Very specifically, I'm going to have you be able to solve problems using. Now, yeah, they're the same thing. It's just how I word it. But under educational objectives, 3 common types of objectives. Learner objectives. You know, I talked about that the other day. Reflect what the learner should know or be able to do at the end of the learning period. And then instructional objectives reflect what the instructor intends to accomplish. And we don't deal too much with the behavior objectives unless we're working like in a group and I want them to act a certain way. But those, you know, younger students, or your parents, I guess, you know, think about behavior objectives, reflect what the learner might be expected to do differently. So, you know, we don't necessarily say in a math classroom, you used to do this when you solve this problem. Now I want you to do this. And that's changing a behavior. We just want them to do the right thing. Behavior objectives, IEPs, and things like that are actually maybe behavior. Like, I want you to be able to sit. Like, you can't sit quietly now. I want you to be able to sit quietly for 5 minutes and do this. I want you to be able to focus on, I'm going to teach you how to focus. I don't know, we don't do much of that in math class. And I think we do that broadly just because we're trying to teach students to be better. But again, keep this in mind. I want the kid to focus. This doesn't help him focus, or this doesn't teach him how to focus. I want you to just sit there and try to focus for 5 minutes. I'll be back. Okay? How am I going to focus, right? How am I going to pay better attention? So we want to write learning objectives. So we want to make it clear to the instructors and learners what's to be achieved in each activity. Provide a baseline to define how learners' changes in performance should be assessed, like how are you going to assess them. Provide a basis for part of the evaluation, and give a clear sense of direction. And there are examples that we're going to look at later on. When you're writing the educational objectives, identify the audience. So the student will, that's probably pretty much always the audience. The behavior, the behavior that the learner must be able to perform at the end of the activity. The student will write the equation of a line. Okay? So writing the equation of a line, that's the behavior. The conditions, though. The conditions under which they will do it. They will write the equation of a line when given. Now I'm outlining the condition, right? When given 2 points on the line. See how that's the condition? The behaviors are going to write the equation. When given this. Otherwise, you're going to write the equation of a line. Any random line? Okay. No. When given specific information. And then, like Maddie said before, the degree to which the behavior must be performed. I tend to stay away from the degree to which. So, not to worry about that. And when it comes to lesson plans, first thing, objectives. Had to read a little bit about that, and a little bit more specific about objectives. Introduction, with the lesson plan itself, introduction, presentation, closure, how to deliver. Like I said, tell them what you're going to tell them, tell them what you told them. But keep in mind, the introduction, I spent a lot of time talking about the introduction, but the introduction really is just the first 5 minutes. But you're setting the stage. I like the statement on page 66 at the top. Effective teachers do 2 things when presenting new content. Organize and structure everything. Now, even the surprises. So when I look at some detailed notes on lesson planning, I like to say this. Part of teaching is ad-libbing. You know what ad-lib is when you're acting, like when an actor is going through their acting lesson or like a manuscript, they're memorizing lines, right? Okay, but that's not all that comes out. Okay, I mean, a lot of it just comes. It's ad-libbing. I'm going to add it. Okay, I'm going to take liberty to add. Okay, I'm going to take liberty to add whatever I want to, and the other actors are going to follow me, and that's a lot of acting. Okay, and I like to work with this actor because when they do this that's off script, I know how to respond. Okay, they often say when you watch comedy shows and the funniest people to work with or whatever, the funniest people on TV are usually people who just say who the actors that have worked with them have said, he just did so much off script. Sometimes you can see it in the other actors' faces too, right? Like they'll give a little snicker and they'll be like, you just said that, now I got to figure out what to do. Those are the great comedies. So what I mean is, part of teaching is ad-libbing, but you can plan those ad-libs too. Like, I'm going to come in and pretend I don't know something and see where it goes. Because when you ask me a question, so for instance, yesterday or the other day, Monday, I was observing somebody teaching reflections across X and Y axis. And he had a really nice lesson. He had an activity where he had cut out sheets of X, Y axes, and he used, oh, not glue, but a little like frosting gel. It comes in a little like frosting container. And Joan, he wanted him to put little dots. He had to make a figure, and little dots on like up here, maybe in the first quadrant, and then they folded it across the Y axis, and saw the difference in the X intercept or the X values and the Y values. Okay, really nice activity. Well, a student randomly asked this question, well, how would a circle look? Or something like, when would a circle look the same as the original circle? Well, if it's centered at the origin, right? Then when you fold it, it would look the same. Well, and because this was the first time the student teacher had ever done the activity, so you're kind of forgiven for that, and you wouldn't anticipate a student doing that. If he knew the answer, which he did, he immediately just blurted out the answer. Well, it would if it was at the origin, do it. But if it was up here in the first quadrant and you folded it, it's not going to be, there, right? Or I guess it's not entirely true just at the origin because, well, at the origin for both the X and the Y axis. But if the center was anywhere on the Y axis and you folded it along the Y axis, right? You're still going to have a same. You just have the same circle, right? I'm just trying to get that in my head. And same thing down here with the x-axis, but if you folded it that way and that way, then you wouldn't. But anyway, the student teacher just offered the answer. Well, I told him afterwards, I said, I know you didn't even plan for that, but the ad-lib part of a teacher, and this is the non-planned ad-lib, the non-planned ad-lib part of a teacher says that when that student says that to me, I say, I don't know what would happen. Now, am I showing my ignorance by saying, I don't know? Maybe if the kid wants to think I'm ignorant because I'm like, why don't you know? You're the teacher. Then I say, shut up, kid, I know. I'm just trying to teach you because I'm a good teacher. Idiot. Anyway, you don't actually say that. Like, I could have done that back in the 90s when I first started teaching. I actually asked a kid one time, I said, never do this. I do not recommend this. Do not do this now. I didn't get in trouble. If you do this now, you probably get fired. But I said, I said, was your mom on crack when she had you? I actually said that to a student in a geometry class. Yep.
What do you say?
Oh, everybody laughed. Now I'd probably get fired. But I also told that class, I think it was the same kid, that if you're not planning on working hard this year for me in geometry, memorize these 6 words. Would you like fries with that? Anyway, my point is that I pretend that I don't know, right? Like, well, I don't know. I wonder what would happen if that. This is where the inductive reasoning part of mathematics comes in. It's like, I don't know. I wonder what would happen. Let's draw something out. Let me see. In fact, you draw it out, kid. You come up here and draw a circle up there in the first quadrant. Now, if you fold it, or do it on your paper that you can fold, if you fold it across the Y, do you get the same circle? No, over there. Then you start to see, right? Well, wait, if I did that and folded it across the Y-axis, I'll get the same circle. But if you fold it across the X-axis, you don't, right? Yeah. Well, where would be the place where you could put it that would fold across the Y-axis and X-axis and still give you the same circle? Oh, but now what have I done? I've led him to discover that for himself, rather than me providing him with information and say, now you just have to memorize it. Right? Well, that's not teaching. I haven't taught you anything. But organize and structure everything. Do it. And then closure. Bring it back in the end. And sometimes closure is just, okay, you've done the activity. You've actually spent the entire 20 minutes doing the activity. Now, I'm going to close the lesson by telling you what you should have learned from that activity. I think the mistake a lot of teachers make is they do an activity and they think the activity teaches. The activity doesn't teach. You still teach. You're the teacher. Okay? The activity can help you help the students see what it is you want to teach them. In the end, I still have to say, this is what I want you to take away from this. So same thing I'm gonna do with you pretty soon. We might be talking in generalities here and throwing up something, but I have very specific notes that I wanna say about lesson planning that I want you to actually take away from this. So close. And then assessment, gave you a little piece on assessment. How well did you teach your lesson? So how am I gonna know how well I taught my lesson? Well, assessment has evolved over the last 25 years. When I learned how to assess students, it took the same form. It was at the end of a lesson, so this is how I was expected to write my lessons. At the end of a lesson, you give a quiz. At the end of every lesson, now a quiz, it's not like a 20-minute quiz, but you give them, I mean, you still do that, tickets out the door, whatever, but that's how I would determine whether I assess, whether my students got it or not. Now we realize that I can do a better job with my students if while I'm teaching the lesson, I'm asking good questions. And it's not like I didn't ask good questions during my teaching there, but it was more because students sat there for a longer period of time and just listened, 25 years ago. So I could get away with just saying more. But now it's like, okay, after you say a little bit, you gotta stop. Are you understanding what I'm saying? And that. So like right now, any comments or questions about like what you read, what you found interesting, anything that you are thinking like, I don't really know how that works. Because this is like the biggest part of lesson planning problem. Objectives, writing objectives, and figuring out what the heck you're gonna do, and how you're gonna assess. The rest is just little details to make sure you're thinking about it. So, to kind of get, and obviously we're trying to get to a point, we did some things before, and now it's information. It's information, and then you'll have your next task, and the task really won't come to fruition until after field. But your next task is going to be let's figure out, let's plan this lesson. Okay, let's plan this lesson. So, and this is something that we start now, we refine in methods 2. So there's a lot of stuff on here that pertains to methods 2 too. But I want you to get your mindset on what teaching is, why we would plan, what's a course plan contain, even though you will not plan a course in here, you won't even plan a course in methods 2. I'm talking about a whole course. Okay? But when I'm teaching, but I can, you'll plan your first course when you get your first job. Your principal will say, okay, you have to teach Algebra 2 now. Okay, what's in an Algebra 2 class? Look at the book, look at the curriculum, whatever, and plan out that whole year long. When I'm teaching a course, when I sit down over break and I got to teach history, math, I get my course, plan and say, what all do I want them to take away from here, and how do I'm not making any lesson plans. I do that more as I go, but I just get that outline of it. That doesn't actually take all that long. I just see what are the major points. Oh, I got to teach quadratic equations. I got to teach rational expressions. I got to teach logarithms in this class. I can teach exponential, whatever. What's a unit plan contain? You won't even plan a unit in here. That's block 2. We just do lesson plan. We just really talk about what a lesson plan is. And I'll talk a little bit about different types of lessons, and then we write your own lesson plans. When I think of what is teaching, just get your minds kind of straight on what is teaching. When you think of teaching, we got to get out of the mindset that says it's simply standing in front of a group of students and telling them how to do things. And I'll give you an example. Probably next week I'll do like a sample lesson. I might wait till we do learning theories, but I'd probably rather do a little bit here just to see kind of how it should flow. And I'm not saying this is how you're going to see things out in the field flow. I'm not saying this is how 90% of the teachers flow. I'm saying that what we know from research is if we do these things, we give more students an opportunity to be successful at it. So it's not just that. What it is it's leading students to discover things. to relate things, to make connections, and learn how to do things. It's using multiple representations to make your points in order to reach as many students as possible. Like, take out a sheet of paper right now. Just somewhere in your sheet of paper. I want you to draw any polygon you want. Yeah, I want you to actually do it. I want you to just draw any polygon you want. You just, you're not going to keep reading, just some scratch sheet of paper, whatever. Draw any polygon you want. Now you have to pretend you're stupid. Okay? Pretend you don't know the answer to this, right? Well, and not necessarily true. I'm going to ask you this question. What I want to do is this. So here's my objective for the day. I want you've drawn any polygon you want. It doesn't even have to be pretty. How many people, now just for you guys, how many people drew a regular polygon? Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, well, you're all wrong. Okay, I said any. That's just what you default to. But if I said this, if I said, I want us to be able to walk out of here today being able to find the sum of the angle measures of the interior, so regular, they're not all the same. I want us to find the sum of the measures of the interior angles of your polygon. Just the sum of them. I mean, how do you think you do that? Now, I'm not going to let you do this, but you discuss a little bit here, and you might have all sorts of, what? What's it? You have a square? No, that's fine. Well, that's fine. I said polygon. You all three drew a square?
No,
Oh, okay.
no.
But that's fine, because a square that's fine. But anyway, so I asked that. So discuss a little bit. You know, and maybe here, if you don't know how to do it, I might then say this. So here's what I'm going to lead you to. I'm going to say, what are some figures that you do know? How many, some polygons, figures, whatever. What are some figures that you do know? How or what the sum of the angles are? Now, the first figure is a triangle, right? And most likely from 7th grade, wherever, everybody's going to be, oh, well, triangle. What's the sum of the angles of a triangle? 180. Well, what about a square? Rectangle? Well, it's going to be 360 because it's 490s, right? Okay, so that's easy. Well, anything else from that, the other people, how'd you get it? Well, you just got, I don't know how I'm going to get it. So now I'm going to say this. Now I'm going to take from any vertex, just one vertex, draw all the diagonals that you possibly can on your paper. Go ahead. From one vertex, choose a vertex. All the diagonals that you can. Don't move to the next vertex, just that vertex. What figures did you split your polygon up into? A bunch of what? Triangles. Okay? Now, I'm still not going to tell you the answer. Now, talk with your group. Think about it. Do you think you could use that triangle to figure out the sum of the angles in triangle? Okay? Now, you're thinking yes right now. Some of your students will be okay with it. Many won't see that there's no overlap, right? So you're saying now that what you do is you split up the triangles, and then this triangle plus that triangle plus that triangle, or whatever you have, all those added together make that interior angle of the polygon. Now, that might be a hard sell for some people. See that those three triangles didn't overlap at all? Well, anyway, so my next question is going to be this. So right now, for yours, figure out how many triangles there are, multiply by 180, and we'll draw a couple up on the board, of course. Brittany, draw yours up. Colin, draw yours up. And this is what you have. So count how many triangles you have, and then multiply by 180. And talk to your partners about how that number will be the number of the sum of the measure of the interior angles. Okay, well, you figure that out. Now, everybody has drawn a different one. Okay? I mean, in general. We have 20 kids in the class. You haven't all drawn squares. You haven't all drawn pentagons. Everybody's drawn a different one. So now my question goes like this. And I'm just coming up with this top of my head. I don't even have a lesson plan for this yet. I'm saying this. Colin, what kind of a figure did you draw? Was it a pentagon, a square, a hexagon? What did you draw?
Trapezoid.
Trapezoid. Okay? How many sides, though, is a trapezoid? 4, because trapezoid, yes, it's a certain kind of polygon, but it's a certain kind of quadrilateral. Okay? When you split yours up into triangles, how many, so it's 4 sides, how many triangles did you get?
From one vertex, I had 2.
You had 2. Gary, what kind of polygon did you buy?
Square.
Did you buy? What do you
I bought a square.
Square. You guys are boring. Okay, square. But it's still a quadrilateral, right?
Yeah.
4 sides. How many triangles?
2.
Please give me something different. Brittany. How many? What?
Hexagon.
You have a hexagon. Woo! How many sides is a hexagon?
6.
6. 6. How many triangles did you break up into? 4. Maddie?
Trapezoid.
Dang you. And I know you. Okay. But let's say pentagon?
Yeah.
5. Change yours. How many triangles did you have from one vertex? 3. We write these up on the board. Anybody knows the pattern of or between the difference between how many sides there are and how many triangles split up? 2 less, right? We have that discussion. So now you've done your activity. I'm going to tell you now how we will find, right? See how that's different than me saying, I'm going to tell you how to find some of the areas or some of the angles in any polygon. Take the number n, subtract 2, and multiply by 180. And then, oh yeah, don't worry, I'm going to show them the picture too. And that's okay. I mean, that's good. That's better than just showing them the formula. I'm going to show them the picture too. And don't worry, I'm going to do 5 examples, so they're going to get it. But nothing is stronger than them sitting there doing it yourself, right? We all want, you know, my 11-year-old loves to ask me questions about driving a car, right? You know, well, how's the clutch work? Why are you shifting in this car and not the other car? And how do you drive with your knees? My 6-year-old asked me that one yesterday. You shouldn't. That's how you do it. Anyway, we've all done that, right? But nothing. But I told my son, I said, the reason that you don't drive with your knees when you're 16 is because I still remember when I got in that car when I was 15. My dad used to let me drive to my grandpa's in the back roads. But I still remember vividly the mailbox I almost took out. I can still take you to it in my hometown. Because no matter how much you know about driving the car, when you get in there and physically do it, and I was only going like 30 mile an hour, right? You know, there's a big difference when you're going 10, and then you start going to 30, and you don't understand the play in that wheel, that steering wheel, right? You know, a little bit of play. Whoa, I'm going all over the place all of a sudden, right? It still works that way when you drive a new car, right? You got to get the experience driving a new car. How's the steering wheel work? How touchy are the brakes, right? You know, nothing drives like the 20-year-old, 320,000 mile Camaro that is actually formed in my buttocks, you know, and I know everything about it. Anyway, but that's what you do. That's how you teach. That's what teaching is. It's not having students read information out of a book. It's about motivating students to learn more on their own, to take learning into their own hands. We can read crap all day long here, but I hope through history of math, through this, that some of our conversations have said, you know, like Gary, I wonder more about how math can be used in the workplace. How can I write a paper that students could read and say, look, this is how math is used in various places in the workplace. Hopefully he's now motivated, because I'm not teaching anything about that. Hopefully he's now motivated to go learn more about that. Maybe I just make this statement here. I'm going to tell you guys something. If you then drew all of the diagonals, I just had you draw the diagonals from one vertex, right? If you then go and draw all the diagonals from every vertex, count them up, not the triangles now form, count the diagonals up from all the vertices. If you count the diagonals up and the sides of the triangle, that is the same number of handshakes that it would take if 6 people, hexagon, whatever, if 6 people were shaking hands in a room. How's that work? I'm not going to tell you. Go home and do more research. Read. Right? Yeah. So that's what it is. Trying to motivate students to do that. Rather do that than go and watch stupid videos. Why do we plan though? Why do we plan? Because good classes don't just happen. Okay? They are carefully orchestrated and executed. If you've ever walked out and said that was a good class, you know, with a teacher, then you can pretty much bet that person spent a lot of time planning. They didn't just come in and start rambling. Oh, I really learned that. I learned something about that. Deviations from the plan are bound to happen. It's not an excuse to not plan. Well, I'm not going to plan because who knows what's going to happen. Well, that's stupid. Don't get out of bed, right? Because who knows what's going to happen that day. I'm not going to get out of bed. I don't make my bed in the morning because I'm just going to sleep in the night before or the next night. I know that's what you do. Me too. But that's not an excuse to not make your bed. And just because you don't know what's going to happen for sure is not an excuse to plan. We plan, and we plan. I tell my wife that all the time. It's a framework. It's a framework. This is the plan. I'll say it again. I'll say it many times. You don't plan a lesson, so you follow the plan. You plan it so you can be prepared for whatever happens ahead of time. You think anything worked just like they did their drills yesterday for lockdowns? It's like, no, nothing. Because when you're doing your drills, no one's actually panicking, screaming, crying, texting their mom, I love you, and stuff like that, right? But yesterday, all that stuff, happened. You're not really locked in a closet. You just stay in your room and pretend that, something out there is happening. But you practice it so you can be prepared for anything that happens. Anything that happens. When I'm running, getting ready for a race, right? Not now, but if I'm getting ready for a race, I will do what's called practice activating all of the mechanisms that will be in place that day. So I practice some sprinting, I practice some pace work, I practice some hills, ups, downs, I practice all these things. I practice just picking it up in the middle, slowing it down. I practice all that stuff. Why? Well, my plan is to go out and run that, let's say I'm training for a marathon. I want to run that marathon at exactly 7-minute miles for 26 miles. That's the plan. Boom, boom, boom. And then you run Boston. And Boston, the first 6 miles are downhill. Well, you're going to be going a heck of a lot faster than 7-minute miles. Because then when you hit 17 miles, after your legs have been beaten going downhill, you hit 17 miles going up, you're going straight up what's called Heartbreak Hill. Okay? Well, you got a plan for 8 miles, you got a plan for an 8-minute mile in there. Possibly it's a flat road. Maybe this course is flat. And maybe, boom, 7 minutes, 7 minutes, 7 minutes, 7 minutes, 7 minutes. That's fine. But you might turn a corner and wind is blowing in your face, for a mile. And you're gonna you plan so you can handle anything that's going on. 3 axioms teachers should consider. This is why you look at this is why you know your content. Know the content being presented, know more than the content being presented, and teach from the overflow of knowledge. So continue studying. I can teach the quadratic formula much better now than I could 25 years ago. Why? Because I've learned more math over the last 25? No, not at all. I've learned more about the quadratic formula. Okay? Study that. So I know the content, I know more than the content being presented. I'm not going to present all I know about the quadratic formula, and I'm going to teach from the overflow of knowledge. And we plan earlier than that morning. Okay, what am I going to do today? I know sometimes we get into ruts and emergency situations, and it's like, okay, I got to figure out what I'm doing today. But you plan earlier in the morning so your ideas can germinate and blend in your subconscious and unconscious. How many times have we woken up in the middle of the night and thought about something, right? And you're like, where the heck did that come from? Well, that's because in your unconscious is thinking. Not that you're knocked unconscious, but your unconscious is thinking about that thing, whether you know it or not, when you're not even sleeping or when you're not even awake. Your subconscious, how many times have we been out doing one thing and thought about something else? Right? I always said in college, I solved more math and physics problems while out on my runs than I ever did by sitting in that workroom trying to solve a stupid problem. Because I'm like, holy smokes. Yeah. I remember one time I had she wasn't a roommate of mine, but she was a friend. And she was having some issues or whatever. And, so I went and just a friend. I slept with her. When I say that, I mean in a different bed, in the room. And she had some twilight things. She was attacked as a girl. Now she had these recurring dreams and stuff. Because when her roommate wasn't there, she wanted somebody to stay with her, and we were really good friends. But anyway, so I was sleeping there, and she told me the next morning. She says, "You were spouting off physics formulas in your sleep." I said, "You should have written them down." I said, "I might have derived a new one." To this day, who knows? Who knows what I might have been saying in there? But
That's weird.
but we do think about things. We do think about X when we're doing Y or thinking about Y. It's just a fact of life. So that's why you want, I can't tell you how many times I've planned a lesson and I go to bed and I'm like, okay, I know what I'm doing tomorrow. And then I wake up and I'm like, oh, I need to change that. Or I'm driving to work. And I'm like, crap, that's not gonna work. You think that's gonna work, but that's gonna, fall flat on its face. And I get to school and I'm like, okay, I gotta make sure this is gonna work. That's why I spend an enormous amount of time in my office letting things out, making sure that when I fold things, it's gonna work the way, I want it to, and I don't just assume that it's going to work that way. I remember this one time I was observing a second grade teacher, and second grade or fourth grade teacher, and she wanted to split her class up into 4 groups. Yeah, she wanted to split them up into 4 groups. She had all her elementary students line up in front of the board. I think when I said 4 groups, 1, 2, 3, 4. This is what she did. She went 1, 2, 3, 4, your group. 1, 2, 3, 4, your group. And told them to sit in different places. Soon she had more people or more groups than had stations for, right? And I'm sitting back there, oh, that's funny, And then she realized it. She realized it was like, oh, I did that wrong. She meant to do 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? That would give her 4 groups instead of 4 in a group. And again, that's just one of those planning things. Like, think about it ahead of time. How am I going to split my kids up into groups? If I don't already have them in groups and I do something spur of the moment, I better know how the heck I'm going to do it. So, anyway, all right. So, I just took that off. Homework though. What do I have? I don't think I had much to do. Do your contribute to the live text, and then read that article 88 to 92 just in your pleasure time reading. There's just a brief article about planning using the Common Core. I mean, you don't have to know anything necessarily about the Common Core. It's just good. It's just what's called as general planning. So that's it. We won't have any projects, anything to do until after field.